Why is the US giving the Space Force a $40 billion budget? Is SpaceX about to static fire a Starship from Pad 1? Rocket Lab launches 2 missions in 2 days, NASA's next-gen SLS booster test loses a nozzle, Australia is getting ready to go to space again, and there are more details about the Giga Bay in Florida. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. There's been a lot of talk about budgets lately, specifically how NASA's is potentially about to be cut. Just before the 2024 election heat up, President Trump unveiled his proposal. A $1.5 trillion reconciliation proposal aimed at border security, defense, and infrastructure. But buried in the fine print is something space watchers couldn't ignore: a proposed $37.6 billion for the US Space Force. With additional reconciliation adjustments, the total climbs to nearly $40 billion. Why is that? It's more than double what the Space Force was working with just a few years ago. In 2021, the budget was approximately $17 billion. Today's baseline is closer to $26 billion. If passed, this new bill would mark the largest single-year leap in the branch's history. It signals a shift in how the US views space, not as a support function, but as an active warfighting domain. So, where is all that money going? A large portion is aimed at improving satellite resilience, expanding early warning systems for missile threats, building secure space communications networks, and upgrading launch infrastructure. Some of the funding is going toward classified programs, including projects linked to the so-called Golden Dome missile defense system. This is a proposed multi-layered missile shield involving space-based assets. There's also support for military payloads launched on commercial rockets and for new rapid response platforms. What makes this different is how central the Space Force has become to the US defense strategy. It is no longer just a subset of the Air Force's budget. It now has its own line item comparable to some of the Pentagon's biggest initiatives. To put this into perspective, for example, the Pacific Deterrence Initiative, designed to counter China's regional influence, totals about $40 billion over 4 years. The Columbia-class submarine program costs roughly $15 billion per boat, and the B-21 Raider bomber program is expected to exceed $80 billion over its lifetime. NASA's SLS rocket has cost more than $30 billion to date. With this new funding level, the Space Force would be one of the most heavily funded military branches on a per-person basis. And its field of work is directly connected to all our favorite fields of interest. It has about 13,000 personnel, while the US Army has over 450,000 active duty soldiers. That difference highlights how the Space Force is focused not on ground forces, but on orbital capabilities and digital infrastructure. Zooming out, the bigger picture becomes clear. The US defense spending is now approaching $1 trillion a year, and the United States spends more on its military than the next 9 countries combined. Many of those nations, like China, Russia, and India, are investing heavily in military space programs as well. So no, it's not just the United States. These include anti-satellite weapons, cyber tools targeting orbital assets, and systems that can disable or manipulate satellites in close proximity. In that context, this budget is not just about expanding capability, it is about keeping up. China may soon be the only country to get a front row seat on one of the most dramatic asteroid flybys in history, and it won't be because they outspent anyone. It'll be because they were actually there to see it. In April 2029, the asteroid Apophis will pass closer to Earth than many of our geostationary satellites, just 30,600 kilometers above the surface. That's basically next door. It's a rare nature experiment where scientists can observe how an asteroid reacts as it enters Earth's gravitational grip. And right now, the most promising mission aiming to capture that moment is a CubeSat swarm being proposed by Chinese universities. Their mission, called the Apophis Recon Swarm, would deploy multiple 10 to 20 kilogram satellites carrying multispectral imagers, stereo mappers, and microwave instruments. Flying in formation, they would study Apophis's surface features, internal structure, and gravitational profile, while also watching for any changes triggered by Earth's tidal forces. It's a high-value science target and a planetary defense test case combined. What makes this more striking is who may not be there to see it. NASA had planned to be. OSIRIS APEX was designed to extend the OSIRIS-REx mission after its asteroid sample return. The spacecraft was supposed to enter a new cruise phase and reach Apophis just before the 2029 flyby, providing a detailed, up-close look at the asteroid before, during, and after its closest approach. Apex would have offered critical before and after data that no flyby alone could replicate, tracking any rotational shifts, structural changes, or surface disturbances caused by Earth's gravity. But under the latest US budget proposal, OSIRIS-APEX is on the chopping block. NASA's science budget is facing a nearly 50% cut to its planetary division, eliminating over 40 planned missions. 40! According to recent reports, the mission was within months of transitioning into its final cruise phase, meaning the hardware, team, and infrastructure were all ready. Now that window could close completely, simply because the funding vanished. NASA may miss a rare chance to observe Apophis up close, even though it already has a spacecraft in space and a mission nearly ready to go. It's the only mission already en route and capable of reaching Apophis in time. Canceling it now means missing the opportunity entirely. OSIRIS-APEX was built for this moment, but budget cuts could cancel it just before the flyby. Smaller, faster missions are stepping up where larger programs are falling short. Apophis will pass Earth in 2029 either way, and fortunately it won't hit us. The difference is that China may be there with cameras rolling, NASA might be watching from the sideline. Northrop Grumman just completed a major full-scale test of NASA's newest solid rocket booster, firing the Bowl DM-1 motor for just over 2 minutes at a remote test site in Utah. And oh boy was it interesting! This was the first live firing of the upgraded booster obsolescence and life extension system designed for future SLS Block 2 missions that will fly deep into the Artemis program. The test consumed more than 1.4 million pounds of propellant and produced enough thrust to become the second most powerful solid rocket booster ever tested. Bowl utilizes carbon fiber composite casings instead of steel, a more efficient propellant mix, and replaces old hydraulic gimbal systems with fully electric thrust vector control, enabling it to direct the thrust for directional changes. But the most dramatic moment came near the end of the burn, when the massive nozzle assembly unexpectedly separated from the booster and fell away in what looked from a distance like an explosion. NASA confirmed that the separation wasn't part of the test plan, and the cause is still under investigation. This wasn't the first time this happened with a Northrop Grumman solid booster either. In May 2019, funny enough, one of the first things I ever covered on this channel, Northrop Grumman fired an Omega booster for a test. While it is different than the Bowl booster for upcoming SLS flights, it shows that Northrop Grumman has faced similar problems before. This new incident doesn't just look like a simple failing nozzle though. You can see that while the end result is the same, the work up to the explosion seems to have originated from within the booster rather than from the nozzle itself. Despite the anomaly, the test provided valuable data, especially during full thrust operations. So it wasn't entirely a waste. Bowl is key to keeping SLS viable into the 2030s, modernizing its booster tech with composite materials and lessons from the cancelled Omega rocket. While questions around SLS's future remain, this test shows NASA is still pushing for more performance, more flexibility, and a path to heavier missions beyond the moon. This matters because SLS is under pressure to evolve or be replaced. Bowl is NASA's attempt to keep it relevant. Before we continue with Starship news, here is something you can do to help ensure that we can keep reporting these things. Hit the subscribe button to stay informed, like this video if it brought you value, and become a wise supporter for extra content. Secure your access to up to 7 picture galleries per week, satellites, helicopters and ground photos, and 3D animations. Chat with me and gain more insights on the topic you love. The entire team is waiting for you, you rock! Starship updates. When Axiom 4's mission took off a few days ago, it cast the rest of Pad 39A in a warm, comforting light, almost like a candle. And that candle shed some light on things we are very curious to see. If you look closely, there were some new details on the in-progress Starship section of the launch site that were revealed. Clearly, the tower is taking center stage in the candlelight as it's the most prominent feature of the new section of the pad, but look around. We are seeing more and more details and signs of potential Starship tank farm sections of 39A coming together. These will hold critical cooling elements and fuel for the pad and rocket, and it looks like it'll be a very similar layout to Starbase and Pad 2. The flame trench was mostly concealed in the shadow of the integration tower, but you can make out one of the inner walls if you look closely. Progress is happening fast, and it won't be long until the trench is complete. With 39A's transformation fully underway, it won't be long until starships start appearing there too. This photo from Greg Scott gives us a good view of the tower and all the activity at the base of it. You can see the inner walls of the flame trench as well, even though there is still plenty of excavation left to be done. Fingers crossed construction keeps speeding up. At Roberts Road, the foundation work for the Florida Giga Bay is nearly complete. Rebar grids are fully installed across the build footprint, concrete pads have been poured, and it looks like the next step is to install the actual frame of the building. Just across the road, the tower staging yard is also active, and it looks like tower pieces for the next integration tower are about to be staged and assembled. Could this be the second tower for 39A or maybe Slick 37? Let me know what you think. At Starbase, excavation is going across the entire footprint of the Giga Bay. Pea gravel continues to be poured on the base, and rebar columns are starting to show up in the vicinity as well. Based on Roberts Road's build sequence, that foundation work is likely the next major step. We'll likely see something very similar here at Starbase. Once that begins, we'll probably see the same grid of steel and concrete take shape quickly, especially with the pace SpaceX typically maintains once the layout is locked in. Yes! We can gather from this that the Florida Giga Bay is currently a few weeks or even a few months ahead in terms of progress. It is giving us a glimpse of what to look for next in Starbase. Consider looking up Greg Scott and RGV Aerial Photography on Patreon. Their images and those of others are essential for all of us. Thank you, Greg and Mauricio. Here comes the next big one. Remember how I said that I expect SpaceX to regain static fire capability of ships after the Ship 36 explosion in roughly 6 to 8 weeks? This created a lot of comments under the episode. Some said it would take until 2026. Take a look at this. My estimate might not have been short enough after all. The ship transport stand has been moved from the production site to the launch site. It looks like SpaceX isn't going to sit around and wait for Massies to be repaired before continuing testing. They are potentially moving forward with unconventional methods on how to complete Ship 37's static fire. Why would this matter? Isn't the orbital launch mount incompatible with ship prototypes? The ship transport stand could technically act as an adapter on top of the orbital launch mount, which would potentially allow for static fire testing on top of it. Yeah, I know, crazy. With Massies still being a while away from being operational again, and with Block 3 approaching fast, SpaceX has to find a way to make this work. Rebuilding Massies for Block 2 after the explosion might not make much sense. Block 3 is almost here, and it looks like they might be moving forward with a quick fix plan. While the adventure at Pad 1 unfolds, Pad 2 continues to move closer and closer to launch readiness. The orbital launch mount has received at least 7 hold-down clamp arms, which keep a super heavy booster and fully stacked Starship in place during testing or an ignition for launch until it is actually supposed to launch. It's kind of like a handbrake for rockets. Engines are running, but it can't take off yet. This means it is about 1/3 of the way complete to receiving its full complement of clamps. The booster quick disconnect covering has also begun to receive some white paint. The flame trench and OLM still are covered in scaffolding as final preparations are being made for the first launch readiness tests. Piping and water manifold testing shouldn't be far away either. SpaceX keeps pushing the limits. Good luck with the next flight, I sure can't wait. Do you want to see amazingly cool things like this from the air with your own eyes? Check out redlineheli.com/Felix for a once-in-a-lifetime experience and $25 off flying in a helicopter above Starbase. The Redline helicopter team is waiting for you. They'll show you the same views our photographer gets on his Starbase flights. Give it a try. Australia is getting ready to join the list of nations that can launch to orbit from their own soil. Gilmour Space just had one major success and may be on the cusp of another. Their ALARA-SAT MMS-1 satellite launched aboard SpaceX's Transporter 14 rideshare on June 24th and is now in orbit, carrying a hyperspectral imager designed to monitor water quality for the Australian Science Agency. And next up is Eris, Gilmore's first orbital class rocket, which is targeting its maiden flight no earlier than July 2nd from the Bowen Orbital Spaceport in Queensland. So what exactly is this all about, mate? Elarasat is a domestically built satellite bus, designed and operated by the Australia-based Gilmore Space Technologies and now in active commissioning. But the bigger milestone may come with the launch of Eris Test Flight 1. This would be the first attempt by an Australian company to reach orbit with a rocket built entirely in country. Eris is a 3-stage vehicle that combines a hybrid-powered first and second stage with a liquid-fueled Phoenix engine on the third. Gilmore Space is not just launching hardware, they are building an end-to-end system with the rocket, payload and launch site all under one roof. This matters because it marks a real turning point for Australia. If Eris makes it to orbit, it would give the country independent access to space for the first time in its history. And even if the maiden flight falls short, just reaching liftoff with this level of complexity would already mark a major achievement. Building rockets and acquiring the necessary knowledge is not an easy task. These are not one-off tech demonstrations. Gilmore is laying the foundation for a national launch capability, a small-sat manufacturing pipeline, and a fully operational spaceport. Wow! At a time when global interest in space access is rising fast, this puts Australia in a position to contribute more, lead more, and depend less on foreign rights to orbit. Rocket Lab just hit a new operational milestone. These guys sure are my favorite Kiwis. After launching 4 satellites for Hawkeye 360 on June 26th, they turned around and flew again less than 48 hours later, sending a confidential payload for the US government to orbit on June 28th. Yes! Both missions lifted off from Launch Complex 1 in New Zealand, making this the company's fastest same-time turnaround to date and their 4th Electron mission in June alone. The June 26 launch, named Get the Hawk Out of Here, deployed 4 satellites for Hawkeye 360's next-generation radio frequency monitoring constellation. And I love their mission names so much. These spacecraft help track radio signals across the globe, supporting everything from maritime domain awareness to emergency responses. It was Hawkeye's 8th launch with Rocket Lab and expanded their growing commercial intelligence network. The follow-up flight on June 28th, called Symphony in the Stars, carried a classified payload for an undisclosed US government customer. The mission reached a 650-kilometer circular orbit and marked Rocket Lab's continued work on sensitive defense-related contracts, a growing part of its manifest. Symphony in the Stars. Can we find out what this payload was about? We can at least guess. Speculation has focused on EchoStar as the likely operator. EchoStar is building out the Lyra constellation, a series of small satellites designed for Internet of Things services. The company launched 2 Lyra Pathfinders on earlier SpaceX transporter missions, and the satellite illustration featured on Rocket Lab's latest mission patch closely matches known Lyra designs. If confirmed, this would be the first Lyra satellite launched by Rocket Lab and the first to fly on a dedicated vehicle, indicating a shift from rideshare to more responsive, targeted deployment. All of this points to a key shift. Electron is no longer a low-volume launcher. This was Rocket Lab's 9th flight of the year, and the company is on track to hit 20 or more launches in 2025. That's a similar ramp up to what SpaceX had a few years ago. The cadence is starting to look routine, and the ability to fly back-to-back from the same pad proves they are dialing in their ground operations with real precision. What makes this different from previous years is the consistency. These aren't tech demos or one-off payloads. They are part of broader constellations and government missions that demand reliability and schedule discipline, and Rocket Lab is showing they can deliver both. In the bigger picture, it's another signal that small launchers are stepping into a larger role. As more customers look for targeted, high-frequency access to orbit, Rocket Lab is positioning Electron as a bona fide, dependable workhorse. That's it for today. Before watching the bloopers, remember to smash the like button. Subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm, and this is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A new Raptor design and our Flight 9 shirt are both up. Link is in the description and in the card you should see now. And if you want to learn more, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Monitoring constellation. All under one roof. Flying.